Mind Over Matter, where deep minds and brave hearts meet. I'm your host, Anya, and tonight's guest is someone who doesn't just coach, she transforms. Rose Leopold is an authenticity and intimacy coach, guiding men towards deeper emotional integration, honest communication, and richer connections with themselves and others. With a background in psychology, doctoral science, studies, and holistic health, and personal rebirth from chronic illness and sex work, Rose brings nuance, fire, and soul to the masculine healing journey. This episode is not just a conversation, it's an invitation into wholeness. So, Rose, your work centers around helping men build emotional awareness and navigate their relationship with the feminine. Why do you think this work is so needed right now?
Yeah, wow. Thank you, Anya. I want to start by saying thank you so much for that introduction and for the flavor that you brought to it. Some of it's things that I've told you, right? And you added some bits of your own flavor that really let me know, like, oh, she sees me. She gets what I'm doing here. Oh, yeah. Well, so generally, I think that it's very beneficial for every human to get in touch with both their masculinity and their femininity. As far as I see it, as human beings, we all have at least the potential to experience both gender poles. And the more that I can be in touch with what is masculinity like for Rose and what is femininity like for Rose, and then how do my masculinity and my femininity interact, that is one of many perspectives on the path to being a whole integrated being. Um, there's, as always, but maybe especially now, obviously a lot of turmoil in the world, and maybe we are seeing a particularly high rate of turmoil between the sexes, between men and women, uh, reflected in divorce rate, and other things, right, that we maybe more or less privy to depending on what content we're consuming in the world. And I find that there is so much potential to create more harmony between men and women, if particularly if men will do the work on getting in touch with their inner femininity and learning to integrate that into their being, and likewise, women with their inner masculinity and learning to integrate that into their being. So through my journey, I've I've developed quite a taste, a lot of compassion for the experiences of men, and I really love, deeply love helping men learn to find that same level of compassion for their own experiences, particularly if they're with their emotions, their body, and their sexuality, because most men uh, were not given any guidance on how to interact with these parts of themselves in a conscious way. Most of us were given very little guidance, but men in particular tend to have had those parts repressed to the point, especially their emotions, of you're not allowed to be emotional, you're a boy, you're a man, we don't feel, right? So there's a lot of um shame, guilt, fear, self-judgment often caked on top of all of the emotionality that many men have repressed. And so what I do is I work with men who tend to be more in tune, more sensitive, more emotional, but don't have the tools yet to learn how to integrate that information. And that's what emotions are, is they're information for us so that we can relate to our experience in a wiser way, and I help men learn tools and help them practice tools so that their emotions become friends instead of enemies.
Absolutely. And that's amazing. So, what are the biggest misconceptions men face when they start this kind of healing journey?
Hmm. Yeah, in brief, it depends on the man, but there does tend to be a trend of um, often men don't realize how difficult this work is. Maybe that's maybe that's because of uh, the misconception that work is very physical and external and out in the world, and that emotions are soft and gentle and feminine, in a way that is you know, cultures built up words like, if you feel you're a sissy, right? And there's this unfortunate connotation of weakness often with emotions. And so when men step into this work, there can be, depending on how far along they are in their journey already, that there can be this misconception of how challenging, or rather that it won't be very challenging, that it's something they just need to think their way through. They just need to have like the magic pill per se, and then they'll understand it. And that is not how the esoteric journey works. It can become very enjoyable, especially after we come to understand the process of it more. But the process of learning to get in touch with and honor and listen to and then integrate into our lives our emotional awareness, especially if we've repressed emotions for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. Most of my clients are in their 40s, 50s, and 60s. Or if we've gone through acute traumas in our lives, it can be very, very difficult, especially at first, because it requires that stop, resist. First, we have to notice things that we have to notice that there's a sense of resistance and defensiveness towards having this new kind of experience. Then we have to notice, oh, and the reason I've been resisting and defensive towards this is because there's a whole bunch of unknown underneath that, a whole bunch of darkness, a whole bunch of I don't feel in control. And then we have to do the actual work of, okay, now I'm going to walk into this dark cave and I don't know what's in there. And especially if we don't have social support around us or a solid facilitator to help us, this can be very difficult, sometimes even impossible. Often we need some kind of guide, even if that's just in a book or on a podcast, to feel the courage and the support to do that kind of inner work. Um, and really, the thing that I think is really cool here, especially for men, is that men tend to, especially men who have really built up their masculine energy, men tend to kind of get off on being strong and courageous and I can do it, right? This very sense of competence and direction, right? And the cool thing is that can be applied to this work. We can transfer those skills over to this work, um, not necessarily easily right away, but sometimes easily, but certainly simply, right? Is okay, this is a new set of skills. I'm throwing myself into the unknown. And I've done so many things before. I am a confident, competent man. I'm going to lean into trusting that even in this new area that is totally foreign to me, that I'm going to figure out how to do it, right? And so transferring those skills of confidence and competence and sense of providership and protection, those, instead of only projecting those out into the world, now they get internalized, right? And now there's this awareness of, oh, maybe I haven't been taking care of me as well as I could have. Maybe I've been a little overly focused on taking care of other people, performing for the world, doing what other people want me to do, showing up well for my family. And guess what? That's all great, but at the point that at the point that we're not taking care of ourselves, or a man isn't taking care of himself enough to balance that as much as he's giving to other people, and this goes for women too, the fuel tank starts to deplete, right? So then the insides The inner self needs more resources, and we can apply the same skills, courage, confidence, compassion, to the inner self as we've been applying to the external world.
That hits deep. Like, there's such power in vulnerability, especially when it's reclaimed with intention.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. Uh, we
So,
suffer a lot, I think more than most people realize from performing. I mean, there's certainly a kind of performance that's like fun, right? I do some acting. I know what it's like to get on stage and to enjoy. I'm gonna be a character. I'm gonna like perform and entertain. There is a way of performing that is congruent or aligned. Most people, though, are more familiar with performing as I have to show up, I have to put on a face, I have to be someone who I'm not in order to get through my day, right? I have to smile, I have to be strong, whatever it is that we feel like we need to do to keep other people happy, essentially, or sometimes to keep other people safe and provided for. And that really I mean, I honestly, I think more than most things, maybe more than anything else in life, takes a toll on us because it means that we're living in direct contrast to what's true, right? Is we're lying through our being, and that's exhausting. So the more that we can practice being vulnerable, being honest, being transparent, and that can be sometimes scary at first if we're not well practiced in it. We might go overboard, right? We might find ourselves being vulnerable with people who aren't really safe to be vulnerable with. We might find ourselves, oversharing per se again with people that it just doesn't make sense to do that with. That's cool. That can be part of the journey too. We'll find that balance of learning to live authentically, which is it instills a sense of aliveness. It allows a natural sense of aliveness to ignite in us. Just like think about a child, right? Most children, not all children, some children unfortunately have already experienced trauma at a young age, but children, much more so than adults, are walking around in the world feeling much freer. Um, Dancing, playing, they're not worried about what other people think, right? So a lot of my work is integrating that aspect of being back into the adult self.
yeah, absolutely. So, you have lived through chronic illness, sex work, and now coach from a space of embodiment and wisdom. How have those experiences shaped the lens through which you support others?
Yeah, great. Thank you for that question. Wow, yeah. So when I was 15, right after my 15th birthday, I started experiencing uh, like the beginning of what would turn into very debilitating, persistent illness, mentally, emotionally, physically. The the mental health aspect is what tended to be most overwhelming. The depression, the anxiety, the panic attacks, the OCD, later on PTSD. But there was always an underlying element of physical illness, lots of GI issues that turned into rampant autoimmune disease later on, chronic migraines, uh, it, TMJ syndrome, etc. So they were always coupled together. I spent 7, 8 years, in and out of hospitals, on over 4 dozen medications during that time, really following what I was told by my doctors, which was essentially, well, 1, you're sick, it's not your fault, but you'll probably be sick for the rest of your life, and 2, we're gonna find a better way to manage this, we just need to find the right combination of medications for you. Okay, so from 15 to 23, I was in this elusive search for the right combination of medications that would make my problems go away, essentially, or be manageable enough. I had a really hard time continuing with school through this time and did take multiple semesters off at different points. I couldn't hold down a job. My I was not functional in life, okay? So I was banking everything on these doctors are going to find a solution that's going to fix me. I spent a couple of years going to 12-step program meetings, and that was a huge turning point in my journey, namely because for the first time in my life, I found people who I could be super vulnerable with. I could be messy. It was encouraged for me to show up exactly as I was, and as opposed to doing that in therapy or in a psych hospital, we were also living life, right? We were going camping, we were going out to diners all the time, right? Hanging out at night, having dances. And so there was an element of, oh, I can learn to live like day to day life even though I feel really messy inside. That's okay, like, there's a way to do that. And in my family growing up, that wasn't modeled for me. There was not we didn't talk about uncomfortable things. We walk on eggshells around uncomfortable things in my family. And so, gradually through NA and then through other breadcrumbs that were set out for me, life coaches that I met, breathwork facilitators that I met, I was offered these ideas like, you're the creator of your reality. The first time that I heard that from, my first life coach, it was so triggering to me. I left his house in tears, on the verge of a panic attack. I was so upset, and that upsetness was twofold. On one hand, there was this anger that was essentially, "What do you mean I'm the creator of my reality? Why would I be doing this to myself? How dare you say that?" On the other hand, I had enough awareness to know that there was some truth in what he was saying. And because of that, I continued to go back. I continued to talk to him. I continued to learn. I learned about things like neuro-linguistic programming. Oh, how I think and how I talk is largely contributing to my experience of the world, to my emotions, to my behaviors. I totally transitioned from the conventional healthcare model to more alternative models. So, got off the meds mostly with the help of my psychiatrist. Started doing breath work, yoga, meditation, working out, totally changed my diet. Hydration became a number one priority. All of those things were never mentioned to me from doctors, and those things, changing my lifestyle habits, rapidly produced new results. Improved my health physically, mentally, emotionally. I went back to school. I was functioning in society much more competently. I felt more in control. So, of course, I continued on that path, opening my mind to more alternative methods, sound healing, psychedelic assisted therapy, a BICOM, so bioresonance therapy that I did with a fabulous chiropractor who really helped me get over the brunt of my GI distress and autoimmune disease. All of these things that just simply aren't talked about in most circles of society, although I do hope that they're becoming more and more prevalent now. So, through that, as I started to understand how many things that are really effective for a person are just not on most people's radars as far as healthcare, I became filled with the desire to be one of the voices letting people know, hey, if conventional methods aren't working for you and you're tired of that merry-go-round, you have other options. There are other options out there that may work better for you. Uh, so I started a life coaching business the semester before I graduated from with my undergrad degree, and was working that for about a year. My undergrad education and my professional experience then was focused on behavioral therapy and child psychology. So when I first started my life coaching business, I was very focused on working with children. I wanted to transition from working with children diagnosed with autism and ADHD to working with children um, that were more receptive to higher levels of emotional intelligence practice, body awareness, and mindfulness practice. Imagining, like, oh, if we would just teach children how to be more self aware at an earlier age, this would prevent a lot of problems down the road. So that's what my coaching business looked like largely for the first year. And then I had some changes in my life. The guy that I was dating and living with at the time, we broke up, he moved out, and suddenly I needed more income to keep paying for the place that we were living. I could no longer pay my bills just on my entrepreneurial income. And so I looked for a different job and I had some offers and they were good. I mean, they were solid job offers, best pay that I had had to that point. Um, but I kept feeling this tug of something that one of my friends had been offering to me for about a year at that point. She was at the time working as a sex worker, as an erotic masseuse. And she kept being like, "Hey, this is pretty cool, like, the men are nice, it's great money, it's really flexible." And I decided to take the dive into sex work. Um, one, because of the financial transition, but the thing that really pushed me over the edge was that I knew that it would help me grow. I knew that it was going to plunge me into a world of the unknown. I knew that it would trigger me, like, it would be challenging, it would be hard, much more so than going back into childcare or behavioral therapy. And yeah, like, I wanted more time, I wanted more money, I wanted to continue to feel the sense of freedom that I had found with entrepreneurship. So I took the dive, I started working as a sensual masseuse or an erotic masseuse, and did that on and off for the next 4 years. And that's where I really developed the depth of compassion and intrigue and um, ability and relatively unique ability to work with men how I do. And so what ended up happening is over time, I integrated the two practices. So I integrated my coaching business and my erotic massage practice. So what I do now isn't sex work, but it is still, well, it's authenticity and intimacy coaching for men, because ultimately I found that I didn't really want to be doing sex work, like, I didn't like the obligation to be sexual with my clients. It kept kind of interfering with my own personal dating life, right? And my goal of being a mom, like, that's a big part of my being and something that I look forward to adding to my life one day. But I did find a deep passion for helping men get more in touch with themselves, their emotions, their body, and self-compassion, because my experience in sex work was that most of my clients, and I did attract a certain type of clientele that really enjoyed intelligent conversation, authenticity, right, and emotional attunement. And my experience was that most of these clients weren't really ultimately looking for just sexual release. What they wanted was connection, and they didn't have the tools to find that connection, that deep connection, that intimate connection, m- mental and emotional intimate connection in their day to day lives. So they were using sex work as a band aid approach to get what they didn't know how to get elsewhere. And for years, the thought in my head was, well, I could teach you, right? Like I could teach you how to stop using this as a band-aid approach and to teach you how to actually get what you want in your real life. And so that's what I do now.
That's amazing. And there's something profound about earned wisdom, and you carry that with grace and grit.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So, Rose, your voice is one of the reclamation for the heart, the body, and the divine dance between energies. And to our listeners, whether you're seeking to understand yourself or someone you love, Rose's work is a lighthouse in the fog. Explore more through her Substack Naturally Rosie or connect with her coaching practice via her Podmatch page. This isn't just about men or women, it's about wholeness. Start where you are. The heart knows the way.